I'm so very pleased to be joined by Lawrence de Silva as we start our spotlight on solitary confinement. And we're really looking at various types of prison confinement where individuals are held in their cells for 22 hours a day and without meaningful human contact. This has really been sparked by the anniversary of the structured intervention units coming into place on November the 30th, which marks 1 year. But we are mindful of the fact that there are other types of isolated confinement, and there has been, and we just wanted a person who's experienced a lot of those types of confinement to tell us his impressions of what it was like and what can be done to improve it. So, Lawrence, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Now, Lawrence, you spent a few years in federal custody, and much of that was spent in either the structured intervention unit or in segregation cells, right?
Yeah, I was never in the structured intervention unit. They didn't exist by that time. That I got out, they were just created and stuff like that. But yeah, I suffered every kind of that you can think of. I've suffered every kind of segregation or isolation that there is to suffer from in prison.
So the structured intervention unit was supposed to be replacing administrative segregation. Can you tell us a little bit about what administrative segregation was like?
Well, yeah, it was long-term segregation, so it was like a refrigerating box. Once you got into any kind of trouble with within the institution, or the institution deemed you as a problem, under 31.3a, they would use this type of language that you've jeopardized the security of the institution, or it's likely that you've done that, or it would lead to something along those matters happening within the population, and then they could just justify under what they were given by legislation, the authority just to maintain you in seg, and it became an ice box. So, you'd usually be, in seg for a long time, or shuffled from one seg to another seg. A prison within a prison to another prison within a prison. And that's how CSC dealt with it.
And many prisoners had real difficulty with that type of isolation, right? Like, it really takes a toll on their mental well-being, would you say?
Yeah, it's scary to watch. Over the years, a lot of people use terminologies when they're talking about inmates with mental illness, like as being bugs or, crazy. Those are the crazies. You know what I mean? But there are a lot of people that do understand that too. So they do understand guys who do self-harm or lash out or need that physical interaction with the staff to get out whatever demon or whatever they got going on inside of their state right then and there. You know what I mean? And it's a demon. And I say that not under the darkness of what the person is themselves, but is when you're suffering through either having your meds cut, because there's a lot going on when you just get to seg, right? Yeah. So you could end up in seg, and then all of a sudden you got no meds. You know what I mean? You have no way of getting to the doctor unless those requests will get there. When you're out in the open population, it happens a lot faster, because then you could see like the keeper. You could press the issues with the staff, with your CMT. I need to see my PO. This is what's going on, so that you don't, fall into those dark states. And that's what I mean by demon there. But those are dark states, and when you're left in that refrigeration box, either by the description that they've punishing you for, it begins to take its toll. And I've watched men go crazy. I think it's schizophrenia when guys will start talking to the lights and stuff like that, and think that the radio waves are affecting their mental states and stuff, and that's scary. And I've seen a lot of that in segregation throughout the institutions that I've been in.
And do you think people fully understood why they were being placed in administrative segregation?
Even if you do, you have to understand that when I was being placed in seg, the majority of the time, Well, I wouldn't even say the majority of the time, because a lot of the times, I'd say 50% of the time, they just snag you up, right? And they'll just make an accusation. But so just because they make the accusation and you know what it is, it doesn't mean that you're legally in a position to defend yourself. And I don't think through the legislation changing its wording into offering 4 hours a day with this structured intervention units and meaningful contact and all this other thing. These are just words. They're empty, like the CCRA has been for many years, and it's similar to, like I said, we have the right not to be tortured and subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. But this is what's happening when a person is just being left to the devices of CSC without legal protections. Like, this is why a lot of the campaigns against CSC in these areas have evolved into where they are, and we're getting rulings.
Was it the
still not fair?
Was it the indeterminacy? Like, people didn't know how long they were going to be in there. That was
it's that, and then it's
well?
also the level of the accusations, right? Because when accusations start to land on your file, just even about inclusion, like there was a fight and in the gym, and it was your friends that fought maybe two other inmates, and they got beat, and then it turns into some gang shit, and then it turns into them targeting you under your file as being a gang member or involved in a strategic threat group organized, and that's what they hit me with. And it's not, you have to know that just because they've changed the wording, I don't think they'll ever change the damage that they're able to do against somebody by being able to take them out of one state of freedom within the open population and then put them either in a cell or in what they're calling a structured intervention unit. What I mean?
So, you're not of the view that they should abolish segregation, or are you? What's your position on that?
For me, just being, excuse me there, but being that I came from an extremely violent environment, and not just in prison. I grew up with violence, and then when I went to prison, I seen how fast that violence can escalate. And with that being said, it's only sensible for me as a person to say, look, I was one of those guys who would, without hesitation, if I felt need be, use violence. And I use it against staff, and I would use it against inmates. You know what I mean? Like, I'd use it against anybody who I felt that I needed to move that way on. Now, you have to, in my view, be able to separate a person like myself. Because if you don't and give me that time to calm down, I might, just continue my behavior in the other area that you place me. And especially if you're placing me around multiple people after I've just been extremely violent. Yeah. So you're not taking the guy's safety into consideration where you'll put me around. Like if I did something in the open population, like stabbed an inmate up, for example, and now all of a sudden I'm in a structured intervention unit, what if one of his friends are in there, you know what I mean? And they don't know that I've just did this to his friends. The first thing on what I would do is initiate violence against his friend before they could do it to me. Because that's how the state of prison is. People are going to find out what happened, and that's how it transfers. And then I also worry about people who are not being able to get out with everybody inside of these, structured intervention units. You know what I mean? Because I was, a certain kind of inmate, but I also seen very descriptive other kinds of inmates that wouldn't get involved and, maybe went to seg, but, like they're scared of everybody that's in the yard right there because they don't want to get hurt, so they don't want to, you know what I mean? Like they might not want to put up their hand to say, I can go out, or I can only go out with this guy. And because if your terminology changes in any certain ways where like you say I can't associate with or I can associate with somebody, but I can't associate with this person, that's you. And like for me as a prisoner, and even as an ex-prisoner, you're ratting. You're telling the police something that you should not be telling them, because if you have a problem with someone, the prison rules dictate that you must deal with that. You know what I mean? And it's just, you do need segregation, but you need it for the legal. Excuse me. You need it for the legal times that are appropriated. You should be able to find what's going on with a person in 15 days. 15 days of segregation. That's it. And not at the last day have the answers, because then it's the maximum of 15 days. You could have these answers if a person can go back, within 3 or 4 days. You know what I mean? And if the person would like to appeal those decisions, then there should be processes for it. But sometimes I feel like the politicians are just, changing the wording on the paper, because the realities inside are, they're not similar to what is, on paper.
So you're thinking that it's they need to solve it within 15 days, whatever the issue is. What often happens is that they transfer people out of the institution, right? Like,
yeah, they're doing that automatically.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. You also spent some time in the SHU, right? Like, can you just tell us what the number of hours out of cell was in the SHU and how that regime kind of worked? Maybe tell people what it is. I'm just using the acronym there.
Yeah, well, the SHU is a special handling unit. It's in Saint-Anne-de-Plain, Quebec, and it's used for inmates who have either been accused of extreme violence, murder, stabbing other inmates, piping, stuff like that, group assaults that have pled out with people bleeding and so on and so forth, or you've been accused of attempting to escape. They can throw you in the SHU. And also, if you're declared a terrorist, you can immediately be put into the SHU. So the SHU is it's a special handling unit, and it's been used in my view for a long time illegally, because there's under the legislation, and we always go back to legislation because we want to hold people accountable. So when you're looking at what forms of descriptive forms are there of security levels, you have minimum, you have medium, and then you have maximum. The SHU is, because it's in its specialities and its restrictiveness, is a different form of segregation, but just modified long term. And it's meant to just hold you there, and it's where the worst of the worst go.
So there are no programs or anything like that to speak of? And
yeah, there's programs such as school, and you'll have access to school if you're on a range. You can also have access to school if you were inside of a segregation unit, but you would go to the booth like once a week or twice a week with your teacher for at least half an hour to 45 minutes, and then you move on. There was also programs such as violence prevention program. I really wanted to finish it up there, but they don't really offer programs in the SHU. They say they do, but they just don't. But the level of getting out of your cell. So let's say you arrive to the SHU, you wouldn't be placed on a range. You're going to be placed in segregation for an assessment period. And that could last up to 60 to 90 days, depending on.
So this is a segregation unit within the SHU?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And at that time, they would assess you. They could assess you on your 30-day seg review. If they didn't find a suitable place, they would say, come back on the 60-day review, and then we'll see what's going on. But usually before that, they would let you out. You know what I mean? You wouldn't stay in the hole that long. If you were just on assessment purposes, if you were being disruptive and stuff, you wouldn't get out, right? But then you would be taken to a range. And basically your routine is you're given access outside of your cell every day for 2 hours of the week. And then on the weekend, you're given 4 hours. Now you have you as a group of inmates. It's only 9 inmates as a total that can be sustained on one range. But you decide if you want to go outside or stay inside. But if you guys go outside, everybody has to go outside. If you guys come inside, everybody has to come in back into the common room. So you just kind of divvy up your schedule, hour of working out. It's usually like 50 minutes of working out and then 10 minutes trying to get in, because sometimes the guards don't let you in right away. And then it eats up your common room time to either cook or use the phone. Yeah.
And how long do people stay at the SHU normally?
It depends. It depends on what you're doing while you're at the SHU. You know what I mean? So it's usually a minimum of 6 to 8 months. That's usually the minimum. But a year and a half, you should be out of the SHU. You know what I mean? But just depends on what you did to get to the SHU, what you've been doing while you're at the SHU, like violence-wise. If you're involved in situations, you're usually going to go before your NAC board, and they won't be supporting you to get out. But the NAC board is just based upon a whole bunch of, in my view, people who just come there and make predetermined decisions based on what CSC's offering them, right? So you can go in there pleading your case, and it's clearly described inside of the CDs as not being a hearing, right? They title it, so they want to free themselves from you having the opportunity to have a true hearing.
So they take away some of the process protections that you might otherwise have.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah, they invalidate
Interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about lockdowns? Outside of the SHU, like in a normal
you can
prison?
do even lockdowns in the SHU.
Okay.
Lockdowns just basically in general for any inmate who's under the normal program of getting access to going to the gym, getting access to going to the yard, having changeover, having common room time, you know what I mean? So that's a normal routine. When you break that routine, it's usually a hard stressor on inmates, and that's one of them that really do it to inmates. It's lockdown, because when you were going towards, like, if you were in segregation and you were admitted to seg, you would have some segregation protections. You know what I mean? Like within 24 hours of being in seg, you would be offered guaranteed a lawyer call, you know what I mean, of your choosing, you know what I mean, just as long as it's on file. And then you would also be awarded a shower, brand new toiletries, all that stuff. Plus an hour a day of segregation activity yard, weather permitting. If the yard was so bad, then they would just leave you in like an enclosed area. So you can just do laps in there and you're out of your cell, and you know what I mean? It just feels better. Was providing you some kind of protections.
Yeah.
Plus the shower, every day, so even if things are going on out in the population, segregation doesn't stop. They still get, access to their showers because they've been locked down, right?
Yeah.
So when you're on a lockdown in the population, you don't have those protections. You're not afforded all the time those protections and the guarantee that you have a right to shower. Now, by legislation, it's important for people to know you don't have a right to shower every day by legislation. You have a right to shower every second day, But the normal routine is that the guard should allow you, which is the normal routine, a shower every day, right, to clean yourself, right? But usually when you're on a lockdown, they're not picking up the garbages. Inmates will start throwing the food out, onto the range to try to get the cleaners back out so that at least stuff can be passed, you know what I mean, through inmates. No, we're not talking about illegal stuff. We're just talking about, look, we were just off all lockdown. Hey, can I get that video game? Hey, man, so you don't have to fish it over, because if you fish it over And if, for the people who don't know what I mean by that, obviously you understand fishing, but you make string and you have to lance on to wherever you're trying to go, and then that person will throw their hook out and then pull your line in, and that's fishing, and then you pull it over. But if you get caught doing that, they'll seize your shit, right? So, inmates are, like I said, inmates are starting to suffer at that time. You're not given or awarded protections.
Can you tell us a bit about the incident the lockdown? I think it was a long-term lockdown that you experienced at Edmonton Institution.
Oh, yeah. I was on a basic, like, it was a real work unit, right? I was on my way out, right? So I was, like, in time wise, I was trying to do everything I could to get towards my stat date. So I was on this work unit in Edmonton, a unit, and we were trying to really get programs up and running. Like I said to you, I wanted to take the VPP. I wanted it for a long time. I think it would, even help to this day, just with tools, understanding myself or whatever. And when I made it to this unit, I eventually became the cleaner of the unit. It's very important, to kind of, this first. And a lot of guards didn't like me in the institution already because, like I told you, I'm if I didn't like what they were saying, it was on, you know what I mean? And it was just that. So they knew that I was a threat, and, in that sense, you know what I mean? So that's how they treated me. But I was afforded an opportunity when I went there. I got the cleaning job. Shout outs to Carpentier. He's the one who got me the job, right? He was on my case management team, but he was an old school guard at Edmonton. He got me the job. And long story short, after, just starting the program and thinking, my stat date was going to be achievable because I was going to lock it up with, successfully completing this program. 2 weeks into doing the program, day in and day out, we went on a lockdown, and it was, I believe it was a section 128 of the union, which gives them the authority to lock down the institution. Now, I had already been in Edmonton for a while, so this is just what they do. Like, this is what they do. When it's a good day and they'll just lock down the jail. And they'll all kick up their fucking feet. And it sounds so ridiculous to the people who are listening and to the way you're looking at me, but they just want it easy. They don't want to work on a hot, sunny day. And that's the way it is. So everyone will get fucked.
Will they have a reason for it?
Look. Here's the thing. That's what they'll say. Automatically, it's staff shortages.
Yeah.
But here's my problem. When I was given the sentence, I thought it was going to be watched by people full time. You know what I mean? And not having people not have a job. And I'm speaking for the guards here now. They should have a fucking job. If you want to work, it's not what I would choose for a living, but if you want to work, why are you not either paying them enough, or you're either mistreating them so much that they don't want to work there? So there's something going on the staff side that we don't know, because I can't speak for what's going on. I can only feel the impact of the lockdown. You know what I mean? And, our mind races with whatever it is. There could have been a stabbing. We don't know. You know what I mean? We didn't hear about it. But now that the cleaners are out, messages are still being passed. Inmates will always talk. We're always going to talk to each other. Even if you hate the other inmate and would attack them, if you could get your hands on them, you're still going to be able to get a source of information of what's happening in the institution. So during this time, there was just, a lot of unrest because they said, staff shortages and shit like that. And it was a bad time because it was during a time when, cleaning supplies were affected by the lockdown. staff like in those areas not being able to come down, do their job, serve out the cleaning supplies like the toiletries, the toilet paper, whatever it
How long did
was.
this go on?
Well, it was for my period. I think it was about 5 weeks.
What?
5 weeks, yeah. And it was just nonstop. And this is what they would do. Now it's not unnormal, for this to happen. It's just not, especially not in Edmonton. So during this time frame, as a cleaner, I had noticed that there was dwindling supplies. You know what I mean? We have to approach the guards and say, yo, like, what the fuck? Like, guys need to wipe their ass. Like, this is not normal. Like, they're using socks and shit because they were like a week past at that time, the first time, it was 2 weeks past the date of giving the cleaning supplies. And I had asked them all week with the support. Now, I'm just a food server, so I'm not a cleaner, but I have to support the range and also support the cleaner because I get out with him at the same time to feed or clean, for the guys who are on the range on the lockdown. And it was just disgusting. The guards' responses were like, I don't give a fuck, like, and it's like, for me, like, as a person, I felt so low. I felt so low where, like, I knew that my rights didn't mean shit. And I literally just wanted to punch this man in his fucking face right now and just do this. But trying to move forward, I'm thinking of my stat date, getting the release, and fuck, like, it's stress, man. It's an unnecessary stress. That's illegal, man.
That's a long time.
It is. That that the UN gives better protections. The UN Declaration of how you should be treating inmates, gives you a better declaration and understanding on how and why we should treat people like that. And it just doesn't happen. And it's another state with dry cell. Like, a dry cell it's just another form of a savage way of treating somebody. They either are in an empty cell with nothing in it, with a hole in the fucking floor that's off and then blocked, so you could just like kind of piss right there, and then you would just have that in your cell. And then if you like, it's just piss, right? So like, it looks like a shower drain, right? So you can't get it off, and it stinks like fucking shit. Now, these are some of the worst ones that I've been in, but they will leave you in these states, or they'll shut off the toilet, take out the water, so you don't have no access to nothing in there, and then they feed you cheese fucking sandwiches. And
so they would put you in a dry cell if they suspected that you had ingested contraband or had contraband.
Well, not only
system.
that. Yeah. Sometimes that's what it's supposed to be used for in those senses. But I've been in cell 100 plenty of times. Colonel's been in cell 100. The list goes on of inmates who've been inside of cell 100, which is a dry cell and an observation cell, as if they were either suicidal or had something in their stomach. And those are the only, two reasons of why you're supposed to be putting people in there. But we were placed there for punitive reasons. You know what I mean? I was never placed into a dry cell to shit something out. But I've seen from those states, because they can turn any cell into a dry cell. So when it's time for you to use the bathroom, they'll come by with like not in front of everybody, but they wheel it to a private room, which is where the search area is, and you shit basically into this portable toilet, and then it just rinses everything off. It's got a water system in it, and then if you have packages, it comes out. But for anybody who's eating cheese sandwiches, this all you're eating is cheese fucking sandwiches.
Yeah, it seems
so like you're gonna be constipated, so that it's longer that you're gonna be in that cell. It's punitive. There's supposed to be no reason for change in the dietary area of where you were getting your food.
Well, I've heard they want you to use fingers to eat, right? Rather than cut.
Yeah, but that's fine. Like, listen, I would rather get my full meal and eat it with my hand than be eating a cheese sandwich.
Yeah. I've heard men complain because there's no access to water. They can't wash their hands before eating.
What they're supposed to do is
they're not
supposed to turn off water.
They're not, eh?
They're not, like, ever. So they do that punitively. But there's nobody to complain to. You see what I mean? So when you hear, like, of these stories, you're just like, oh, what the fuck? How could you be in there with no water? And, like, well, yeah. You have you heard of being starved out and stuck in a fucking dry cell? This is real happening right now.
Yeah.
Where you won't have water, you'll have a tea in the morning or a coffee that they'll give you for your breakfast. You'll have that option, but you can't get no water. You can't. Your shit's off. So, like, how are you drinking? And you ain't drinking out the toilet because that shit's off too. Not that I would be ever, but you could see.
There's no chance.
Like, even for a person who thought that they were fucking so needy, like, the guards will just laugh at you if you're. That's why inmates become disruptive in those states.
So
that's why
it's
sometimes when you're looking at,
experience.
it is. That's why sometimes when you're looking at how angry people are inside of prisons when they're banging and kicking and thrashing on the door, or maybe they're a little bit more animated than other people are, or it seems that they're a little bit more aggressive than they're fed up and they're into those states where they've been treated this way, and this is the Canadian system.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the worst system in the world. I am not saying I'm not bashing my country at all. I love my country, but I wish it was a hell of a lot better in the sense where they were treating people inside of, and they do not. You just don't have to be someone who's affected by a mental illness to be treated a little bit better either.
Yeah.
Like you have to treat inmates better than what you're doing, and legally, and there be some kind of legal understanding that the justice system is failing. It's us from the people who it's sending under these sentences to be served out under these conditions. And if you look back to Arbor, she tried to manifest those through the Arbor report in their recommendations by saying, if someone's sentence has been affected by arbitrary detentions or forms of abuse, it must be reduced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The men that I've spoken to who've been in the dry cells felt it was a humiliating experience, that people were watching them defecate.
Yeah.
That sometimes they had actually produced the drugs and they still wouldn't let them out.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I've seen that too, where a guy says, "Yo, I only got 4 packages," and he's really telling him, "I only got 4," because you're gonna be stuck in there. But here's the thing, like, you're asking somebody and then you're automatically declaring them a liar because now they've told you what they have. Now you just think that there's someone they're just trying to hold back. What if he just shit out 5? No one has control about how many packages they're shitting out when you're trying to shit it out.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? If I tell you I have 4 and I shit out 8, like, I understand, like, I ain't getting no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, fuck, if I only told you I had 2 and 2 came out, why would I be in there for the extra week on the cheese sandwiches on the, no, like, it's so disrespectful to eat the same thing every fucking day.
Yes.
And then eat something that is not high in protein, it's not nutritionally sound, and it's not what they're saying they're offering inmates on a daily basis.
So you would get 2 cheese sandwiches, like one for lunch and
Yeah,
one for dinner?
one for lunch and one for dinner.
And this tea or something in the morning.
And then like a tea in the morning, or like with an apple and toast. You know what I mean? And that's it. That's all you get,
Wow. What about the cell 100 if you're there for medical observation?
You're on the same cheese sandwich bullshit.
You are?
You're on punishment, so you're...
No, what I've heard that men don't like is the fact that they can't wear their clothing. They're given a different...
Well, look, I was always clear about my record. I have no sex offenses. I'm not, I don't suffer from that problem, all right? I have no convictions like that. But I ain't putting on no fucking dress so that, you know what I mean? Like, you give me my clothes or I'm walking around fucking butt naked. And it's just that, like, I'll take my meds like that. I'll I don't care if there's female staff. I don't care if there's male staff. You know, as an inmate, you got to understand when staff say, yo, it's strip, right? Like, yeah, and you have to look at it from my view. When it's time to take off your clothes in front of the guard, you have to do it. There's no question. They will rip your clothes off, right? So if you don't comply with that, that's what's going to happen. I've known that ever since I was a young man coming to jail. But when it's time for the search, they got to search you. So why now is it any different that you're not giving me clothes, but you're giving me a dress? Like, that's it. That thing is so dehumanizing to wear. You know, I would not wear that ever. You know.
And so you would be naked in the cell then.
Yeah.
And they would be observing.
I use it for a blanket or to, you know, to lay on and to, you know, to cover, like basic cover, because it gets cold in themselves, right? Yeah. So you do want to cover yourself up, but I wouldn't wear it in themselves. Yeah. You know. Like, I'm not a woman. I don't wear a dress. You give me clothes. It's just, you know, it's dehumanizing, you know. Yeah. And we shouldn't treat people like that.
Yeah. Well, Lawrence, I've learned a lot about various types of isolation. I really appreciate you sharing your insights into this.
All right.
Thank you so much.